Matters on the calendar for preliminary hearing today. Attorney Hogan, what's the status?
Your Honor, we are prepared for the hearing this morning. I did want the court to address the motion that I had filed. It should be document 26, filed March 18th. I think although I drafted that motion with respect to the original criminal complaint, the arguments are still applicable for the amended criminal complaint, asking that the state make more definite and certain as to the alleged neglectful conduct. If they're unable to, I believe that the criminal complaint is insufficient for purposes of the chronic neglect charge.
All right, which document did you say that was?
26.
Oh, there we go. All right, and Attorney LaBrie, then your response.
Judge, I think the amended complaint that was filed by the state on March 19th of 2024 addresses the concerns that are listed in the motion. And when a court looks at the criminal complaint, it must contain sufficient information together with reasonable inferences that there's probable cause of the crime. And at this point in the process, all reasonable inferences must go to the state. If there's equal inferences, the complaint is still sufficient. In the amended complaint, we have a narrow time frame. We're talking less than 20 days. Obviously, venue's been established. The victim was in the care of the defendant for that time period. There was his own admissions that the victim was specifically transferred to his care on February 12th of 2024. And the conduct while in that care involves multiple instances in the morning hours while the defendant as well as Ms. Bauer were away from the apartment. The victim is 3 years old and leaving a 3-year-old unattended for over an hour, I think also would qualify as one of the neglectful acts. We also have other evidence listed in the complaint, not only of the disciplinary things, the cold water discipline that was used, the fear tactics that were used, as well as the timeouts and being left alone. I think when you look at all inferences, the complaint is sufficient. I ask the motion to be denied.
In response to that, Attorney Hogan.
I stand by the arguments that I indicated in my motion.
All right. As the court views the motion, I'll just address as it relates to the charge of child neglect. It indicates 6 elements. The child is not attained the age of 18. I don't believe that's in dispute. The defendant was a person responsible for the welfare of the child. I don't think that's in dispute. The defendant, through action and for reasons other than poverty, failed to provide necessary care. I think the instances noted by Attorney LaBrie, as well as the alleged admission in the complaint by Mr. Vang that the child was in his care. He went to sleep and then the child, when he wakes up, is gone. That certainly seems like a failure to provide necessary care. The failure to provide seriously endangered the physical, mental, or emotional health of the child. The failure to provide was negligent, and the natural and probable consequences of the neglect would be death, great bodily harm, child sex offense, emotional damage, or bodily harm. I think for the reasons outlined by the conduct described by Attorney LaBrie, as well as the fact that Mr. Vang allegedly acknowledged that the child was in his care, he woke up, the child was gone, certainly rise to the sufficient level. So the court will deny that motion. What other motions did you want to take up prior to the preliminary hearing, Attorney Logan?
No other motions to take up.
All right. And your client wishes to proceed with the hearing then?
Yes.
All right, Attorney Labrie, you can call your first witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Detective Herman.
All right,
There is a second witness, Lieutenant Glazer, who will be stepping out in the courtroom.
sounds good. Detective, you please come to the witness stand here, remain standing, raise your right hand. Clerk will administer the oath.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, be seated. State your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Michael Herman, Herrmann.
Go ahead, Attorney Labrie.
Detective Herman, how are you currently employed?
I'm a detective with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office,
And how long have you been with the sheriff's office?
30 years,
And how long have you been a detective?
5 years.
Were you so employed on February 20th of 2024?
I was.
And on that date, did you respond to 3918 Mishcot Road, apartment number 102?
I did.
What municipality is that located in?
The city of Two Rivers.
Is that Manitowoc County, state of Wisconsin?
It is.
When you responded to that apartment, did you speak with a Jesse Vang?
I did.
And the person you know as Jesse Vang, is he present in court today?
He is.
Can you describe where he's seated and what he's wearing?
He is seated at the defense table between his counsel, wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Let the record reflect identification of the defendant.
So reflected.
Did you have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Vang on February 20th of 2024?
I did.
And initially, did you speak with him at his apartment?
I did.
When you initially spoke with him, what information did he tell you about the victim, child one?
He indicated that the child was in his care, and that on that morning, he had gone to bed and brought the child with him into his room, closed the door, and that he woke up again at 11 o'clock in the morning and the child was missing.
And when you spoke with him, he indicated that he was in the care of victim child one at that point in time, correct?
That is correct.
Did he give you time parameters as far as when he initially started caring for that child?
He did.
And what time period was that?
Mr. Vang picked up victim child one on February 12th in the city of Fond du Lac at a quick trip from the child's mother, Katrina Bauer,
And how long was he supposed to have the child?
until the following Friday, the 23rd.
This apartment on Mishcot Road, was that Mr. Vang's residence?
Yes,
And were you able during the investigation to ascertain the age of victim child one?
I was
How old was victim child one?
3 years old.
Did you have an opportunity to have a longer conversation with Mr. Vang at the Two Rivers Police Department?
I did.
Did you speak with him regarding victim child one and the purpose of the victim staying with him from February 12th through that February 23rd timeframe?
I did.
And what did he tell you about why the child was going to be there?
He had indicated that the child's mother was having difficulty with the child and the child's behaviors. An agreement was made between Mr. Vang and Ms. Bauer that he would assist her with those behavioral issues. An agreement was made that the child's custody would be transferred to him for a period of time to assist with those behavioral issues.
And did you discuss with him how he was going to deal or how he did deal with those behavioral issues?
I did.
And what information did he provide as far as dealing with those behavioral issues?
He indicated that the child would be in timeouts whenever there was problems with those issues.
And did you ask him what he meant by a timeout?
I did.
What did he tell you?
Indicated that he would have the child stand for 2 to 3 hours and pray while he was standing.
Did he give you any specifics as far as body position, as far as how the child had to stand?
He did. He indicated that he would stand and place his hands in a praying position and demonstrated this by placing his hands together in front of his person.
And he indicated that initially when you spoke with him, that this would go on from 2 to 3 hours at a time.
That is correct.
And while this was happening, was the victim allowed to sit down or do anything else, or did he have to stand for the entire time period?
I was told that he was required to stand for the entire time period.
Did he indicate how often these timeouts were happening?
He had indicated to me that the entire purpose for him being at Mr. Vang's residence was for a timeout. So he did not indicate exact amounts of times during the day, during any given day, but indicated that the entire purpose for his being at Mr. Vang's apartment was as a punishment.
Did he give some timeframes such as, was it the timeouts were the majority of the time, or whether it was a shorter amount of time?
The majority of the time.
Did you also talk to him about other disciplinary tactics such as cold water?
I did.
And what did he tell you about cold water?
I had asked him if the timeouts don't work, what process he would use for addressing the behavioral issues. He indicated to me that he was not sure why, however, the child did not like cold water. So he would give an ultimatum to the child that essentially asking him if he wanted cold water.
And he had indicated that that was something the child did not like or was concerned about?
That is correct.
Did you also talk to him about other care of the child as far as physical needs such as diapers, food, those types of things?
I did.
I'm gonna start specifically with diapers. Was victim child one potty trained at this point in time?
Mr. Vang advised that he was not.
Did he indicate whether he was using diapers?
He did.
And did he indicate how often those were changed?
Mr. Vang advised that he changed the child's diaper at least one time per day.
He didn't indicate that he would change every time he was soiled, it was just one time per day on average.
That is correct.
Did you also talk to him about any food needs?
I did.
And what did he tell you?
Mr. Vang advised that the child was still bottle fed, and he was attempting to get the child to move to more solid or adult style food during the time that he was with him.
Would he withhold any food from him?
He indicated that he was withholding milk.
Did you also talk to him about other typical child needs such as activity or toys,
I did.
those types of things? And what did he tell you about those typical child needs?
He was asked about toys in the residence. Mr. Vang indicated that there was one toy in the residence, which was given to the child at Christmas time, and he had helped put that toy together. However, during this stay, because it was a punishment, he was not allowed to play with that toy.
So between that February 12th time period and when you were speaking with him, the victim was never allowed to utilize the one toy that he did have at the residence, correct?
That is correct.
And did Mr. Vang indicate a reason why he wasn't allowed to do that normal activity?
Again, he identified that his time with Mr. Vang during those weeks was as a punishment.
And specifically the timeouts.
Correct.
I have nothing else of this particular witness.
Attorney Hogan?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, did you review anything prior to your testimony here this morning?
The criminal complaint.
And that was the only thing that you reviewed?
That is correct.
And when you say the criminal complaint, do you mean the original or the amended criminal complaint?
The amended.
Now, you testified that Mr. Vang told you he started caring for victim child 1 on February 12th,
That is correct.
and it was supposed to last until February 23rd.
That is correct.
And when you responded, that was February, I believe you said 20th?
That is correct.
With respect to Mr. Vang talking to you about the timeouts, you indicated Mr. Vang told you the child had to stand in the corner or stand for 2 to 3 hours.
That is correct.
Did you ask him whether the child was unable to stand for the 2 to 3 hours?
We did pose that question to him, and he had identified that it was not like the child was having trouble standing during those timeframes.
So Mr. Vang told you that the alleged victim, child 1, didn't have trouble standing for 2 to 3 hour periods.
He did not indicate either way.
And you testified Mr. Vang had alleged victim, child 1, pray during those 2 to 3 hour timeouts.
Correct.
You testified that Mr. Vang said he would use the ultimatum of cold water, if I heard you right.
That is correct.
And did Mr. Vang ever tell you he used cold water in any way?
During my interview, he denied that.
So he denied actually using cold water?
That is correct.
And did he tell you what this ultimatum of giving cold water actually meant he would do?
He did not.
So it's not as though he told you it meant I was going to pour cold water on you?
He did not mention that.
And you said Mr. Vang told you alleged child victim 1 didn't like cold water.
That is correct.
Did he explain that more as to what he meant by that?
He did not.
You testified Mr. Vang told you alleged child victim 1 was not potty trained
That is correct.
and that he was still in diapers.
Correct.
And I think your testimony was Mr. Vang told you he changed the diaper at least once per day.
Correct.
And did you ask him if there were days where he changed the diaper more than one time?
I do not recall.
You had spoken to Mr. Vang actually at this apartment where this all allegedly occurred.
Correct.
Did you see more diapers at that location?
I did not.
Are you aware if diapers were located at that residence?
I'm aware that a search was conducted of the apartment, however, I am not aware of the contents of that search.
And you testified Mr. Vang told you alleged child victim 1 was still bottle fed,
That is correct.
but that he would try to get alleged child victim 1 to eat more solid foods.
That is correct.
Did he tell you whether alleged child victim 1 actually ate more solid foods?
He did.
He did tell you that alleged child victim 1 ate more solid foods?
He indicated that the child would eat with him and his son while they were eating.
And so when you testified, Mr. Vang told you he withheld milk, he still provided the alleged child victim one other food.
That is correct.
You testified that Mr. Vang told you there was one toy in that residence?
That is correct.
Did he tell you what kind of toy that was?
And it was indicated it was something similar to a toolbox.
Did you ask him whether there were books at the residence?
We did ask him if he was allowed to participate in any other fun activities. And again, he had indicated that he was there for punishment and was not allowed to participate in those activities.
So Mr. Vang told you alleged child victim one wasn't allowed to engage in fun activities.
Correct.
Did you ask him whether there were books at the residence?
I don't recall if I specifically asked about books.
And did Mr. Vang mention anything about books, specifically children's books?
No.
And since you testified you are not aware of the contents of the search, you wouldn't be aware whether books were actually located at the residence, would you?
Not specifically, no.
Do you recall approximately what time in the day that you spoke with Mr. Vang at that apartment?
I believe it was around 1 p.m.
And do you recall what his demeanor was like?
Calm.
But this was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Correct.
Do you recall when the initial dispatch occurred?
I do not recall.
Do you recall if it was very shortly prior to you meeting with Mr. Vang?
There had been some time that had passed between the time I went to the apartment and the initial call.
Did you listen to any 911 call recordings?
I did.
Objection, relevance.
I think that question's fine. I'll let him answer that question. You can answer.
I did not.
Did Ms. Vang indicate whether there was anybody else in the residence during the time from February 12th to February 20th?
Yes.
And who was that?
Indicated that his son, Raiden, was in their residence as well.
So there was another child living at that residence?
Correct.
Did Mr. Vang say anything about whether alleged child victim one was allowed to play with the other child?
That subject was asked, and he had indicated that his son does not typically play with other people. The only contact that child victim one had with his son was typically when they were eating.
I have nothing further at this time.
Turn the briefing phone.
Yes, briefly, thank you. Detective, when you were talking with the defendant about these timeouts, did he indicate whether the victim would get tired or not?
He did indicate during the interview that he believed that the child would become tired from standing for long periods of time, yes.
And through your course of employment in law enforcement for 30 years, based upon your experience, typically do children need to be changed as far as diapers more than once a day?
Yes,
The other child that was in the residence, the defendant's child, is he of the capabilities to be able to care for others?
he is not.
Is he even able to really communicate with others well?
He has a very difficult time communicating. Mr. Vang had identified that his son has autism.
I have nothing else, thank you.
Any follow-up to those questions, Attorney Moore?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Officer, you were asked a question about whether a diaper needed to be changed more than once a day. How many times would a diaper need to be changed?
Diaper should be changed every time it becomes soiled.
And if it was only soiled one time?
If it's only soiled one time, I can see where it would only be changed one time.
Now, you testified, I think that's in relation to alleged child victim one not being potty trained, right?
Can you
When you were talking with Mr. Vang about diapers, that was in relation to alleged child victim one not being potty trained.
Correct.
And did Mr. Vang tell you whether alleged child victim one was ever able to use a toilet?
I don't know that we asked that question,
So alleged child victim one could have used the toilet sometimes.
potentially.
And on redirect, you testified that Mr. Vang told you alleged child victim one would become tired from standing.
Correct.
Did he tell you how alleged child victim one showed that he was tired from standing?
He did not.
So you just assumed alleged child victim one would become tired from standing.
I don't know what he would have been thinking at that time.
I have nothing further.
Any follow-up to those, Attorney Moore?
Not for this one, Judge.
All right, Detective, you can sit down, thank you.
Let's see what we're calling Lieutenant Glazer.
Lieutenant, you can come on up to the witness stand here, remain standing, raise your right hand, and the clerk will administer the oath.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter not before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Seated. State your full name and spell your last name for the record.
David Glazer, last name spelled Glaser.
Go ahead, Attorney Moore.
Your Honor, just for the record, there are going to be two exhibits that I'm going to be using with Lieutenant Glazer. I've previously shown them to counsel prior to the hearing. I'm going to be asking, once they're moved into evidence, that they be sealed in the record and only accessible by the court and counsel.
Attorney Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. I did have an opportunity to review both of those photographs prior to court. We would have no objection to the court sealing those and allowing access only for the court and the attorneys.
So the court grant that request and then just, I guess, caution the lieutenant when the pictures are being handed around. Try to keep them confidential. All right, go ahead, Attorney Moore.
Lieutenant Glazer, how are you currently employed?
I am currently assigned the role of Detective Lieutenant for the City of Two Rivers Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Two Rivers Police Department?
It'll be 8 years in June,
And how long have you been Detective Lieutenant?
1 year in May.
Were you so employed on February 20th of 2024?
I was.
And as part of your employment, did you respond to 3918 Mishcot Road, apartment 102 in the city of Two Rivers?
I did.
Did you make contact with the Jesse Vang at that residence?
Yes.
And did you assist in this investigation in various aspects, not only interviews, but also reviewing some evidence?
I did.
As part of this investigation, did you also speak with a Katrina Bauer?
Yes.
And when you spoke with Katrina Bauer, did you speak specifically about victim child one and whether he was left in the care of Jesse Vang?
I did, yes.
And what did she tell you about whether victim child one was left in the care of Jesse Vang?
She said that victim child 1 was left in care of Jesse Vang on February 12th, 2024,
And how long was the child supposed to be with this woman?
until approximately February 3rd, 2024.
And she was the parent of victim child one, correct?
Correct.
And she left him in the specific care of Mr. Vang during that time period, correct?
Yes, yes.
Did she indicate why?
From what she had told me was that it was for disciplinary actions, so that Jesse could, the defendant could instruct further on victim child 1 behavior.
And did she talk to you about discipline that was being used in Mr. Vang's home?
Yes, that was discussed.
And did she describe some of the discipline that was used?
She did.
What did she tell you?
I was told that victim child 1, the discipline that was filled out by the defendant was to be set in a praying motion for extended periods, repeating a phrase that victim child 1 had to memorize. And I believe that was it.
Did you also assist in searching of that apartment in Two Rivers?
I did.
During the course of that search by law enforcement, were any dirty diapers located in the apartment that you could find?
Not to my knowledge.
During the course of this investigation, were some cell phones recovered?
Yes.
And who did law enforcement recover cell phones from?
From several different people, specifically Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang.
And were they recovered specifically from, let's say, their person, like Ms. Bauer's person or Mr. Vang's person?
Yes.
Were those phones subsequently searched?
Yes.
And during the search of those phones, was law enforcement able to locate messaging as well as photographs?
Yes.
Have you reviewed some of those photographs and messaging?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start around February 13th of 2024, where there were some discussions between Ms. Bauer and Mr. Vang about her coming to his residence.
Yes, there were.
And during those discussions, was there any discussion on whether she would be able to see victim child one or not?
From my recollection, the defendant advised Ms. Bauer that she would not be allowed to see Elijah. Correction, victim child one.
Did you also look in that time period on the phones for any other documentation such as photographs in that time period, February 13th to February 14th?
Yes.
And was there any, strike that, were any photographs located on Ms. Bauer's phone from February 14th of 2024?
Yes, there was a deleted one phone.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yeah.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1. Can you review that, please?
Yes.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
And can you just describe for the record what that photograph depicts?
The photograph depicts victim child one wearing what is believed to be a black blindfold and appears to have bruising to his cheek, neck, and arm area.
And that was the photograph that was recovered from Ms. Bauer's phone, correct?
Correct.
And that photograph had been deleted, but it was able to be recovered?
Correct.
Your Honor, I move Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections? No. Court is exhibit 1.
And that was taken in the early morning hours of February 14th of 2024, correct?
Correct.
Did you also review messaging from February 15th of 2024?
I did.
And was there any messaging regarding timeouts from February 15th?
There were.
What type of messaging was occurring on that date?
Is it all right if I reviewed my criminal complaint for verification on what that message entailed?
Would that refresh your memory?
Yes.
And just for the record, is it the amended complaint or the original criminal complaint?
The amended complaint filed 3/19/24.
But as allow to review that.
Go ahead.
The messaging on February 15th depicts a picture of what appears to be victim child one standing in the corner wearing only a diaper. The picture appears to be taken from the defendant's bedroom located at 3918.
Did you actually review that photograph?
I did.
Your Honor, may I approach? I provided you Exhibit 2. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And is that the photograph from February 15th of 2024?
It is.
And that was sent from the defendant's phone to Ms. Bauer?
Correct.
At approximately 8:24 p.m.?
Correct.
And just for the record, can you describe what that photograph depicts?
It depicts what appears to be victim child one wearing only a diaper that appears to be full, standing in the corner near the doorway of what is the defendant's bedroom door.
And you've personally viewed this photograph, correct?
I have, yes.
Okay, so you're able to recognize what the rooms look like?
I do, and I recognize it as the defendant's room.
I move Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection? No. Court is exhibit 2.
During a review of cell phone information for Ms. Bauer and Mr. Vang, did you review information from February 16th of 2024 into February 17th of 2024?
Yes, I did.
And on February 16th, was victim child one still in the care of Mr. Vang?
He was.
And in fact, he had been seen with Mr. Vang earlier in the day, correct?
Yes.
Was there a point in time when there was messaging between Ms. Bauer and Mr. Vang on the evening of February 16th of 2024?
There was.
And was Ms. Bauer coming to the Two Rivers area that evening?
Yes, she was.
And did she send any messaging as far as victim child one in the evening hours while she was on her way?
She did. She told us the defendant to put him to sleep.
And looking at the cell phone information, were you able to see where Ms. Bauer's cell phone and Mr. Vang's cell phones traveled the early morning hours of February 17th of 2024?
Yes.
And did Ms. Bauer come to Mr. Vang's apartment?
She does.
And do the two cell phones leave together?
They do.
And approximately what time do they leave? Do they know?
12:30 a.m. on the 17th.
And where do they travel to?
The city of Manitowoc.
And specifically, where does Mr. Vang's phone travel to?
Saucy's Bar in the city of Manitowoc.
Was law enforcement able to make contact with individuals from Saucy's Bar?
Yes,
And was Mr. Vang seen there?
he was.
And did he have a child with him at that point in time?
He did not.
Did Ms. Bauer's phone stay at Saucy's Bar, or did it travel somewhere else?
He traveled to a quick trip located near Calumet Avenue in the city of Manitowoc.
Was law enforcement able to obtain video from the quick trip?
Yes.
And when the video was obtained, was there any video that included Ms. Bauer?
Yes.
Was it inside the store or outside the store?
Both outside the store and inside the store.
And when that video was reviewed with her inside the store, was a child with her?
No.
And when the video was reviewed, when she was sitting in a vehicle in the parking lot, was a child observed with her?
There was no child there.
Was there a point in time when Ms. Bauer went back to the area where Mr. Vang was at the bar?
There was.
And did both of them travel back to Two Rivers?
They did.
Roughly, when did they get back to the Two Rivers area?
Based off their cell phone data, it shows the two of them meeting back up at approximately 1:55 in the morning and then traveling back to the city of Two Rivers.
So with travel time from Manitowoc to Two Rivers, it's after 2 a.m. by the time they get back to the apartment, correct?
Correct.
Did law enforcement try and determine if anyone else was caring for victim child one during that time period between 12:30 a.m. and approximately 2 a.m.?
Yes.
And during that time period, was law enforcement ever able to find anyone who was caring for that victim child one?
We were not.
Did Ms. Bauer stay in Two Rivers or did she leave?
She left.
And she left in the early morning hours?
Yes, in the early morning hours, approximately 5 in the morning. on the 17th.
And she was traveling back towards the Wisconsin Dells area, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, there was a point in time when she was stopped, correct?
Yes.
And were any children in her vehicle when she was stopped?
No.
Did you review any messaging between Mr. Vang and Ms. Bauer related to February 17th of 2024?
I did.
And specifically, I'm going to the time period of 6:39 p.m. What was the messaging about around that time period?
I believe the messaging was about victim child one filling his diaper and the defendant being upset about it.
And what did you do as a result of victim child one filling his diaper?
I recall him stating that he had given victim child one a cold shower and that he appeared to be scared afterwards.
So as a result of the overfilled diaper, he was given the cold shower and that the child was scared, correct? Okay. Did you also review messaging from the time period around February 18th of 2024?
I did, yes.
Was there a discussion between Mr. Vang and Ms. Bauer about victim child one in the early morning hours?
There was.
And what was Mr. Vang telling Ms. Bauer?
Is already referenced the exact quotes from these messages from the amended criminal complaint?
Would that refresh your memory?
It would, yes. On the morning of the 18th of February, the defendant messages Ms. Bauer telling her that to trust him and that he's going to make sure that he hates him being at his residence. And Ms. Bauer responds that she does not want him to hate the defendant, just to fear him. And the defendant responds saying, "It's okay, someone had to be the bad person." And Ms. Bauer responds by saying, "I know, but either way, he can fear you and respect you." And the defendant responds, "He did fear me, but he didn't respect me. Now I'm making him respect me."
I have nothing else at this point.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, did you review anything prior to your testimony here today?
Yes.
And what was that?
The amended criminal complaint, as well as additional reports that reference the criminal complaint.
So you, prior to your testimony here this morning, you reviewed other reports?
Specifically my own,
And when did you review that report?
this morning when I came in for duty.
And do you have a copy of that with you?
I do not.
And where is that report now?
That would be located at the police department in Two Rivers.
And you reviewed that in preparation for your testimony here today?
I did, yes.
Your Honor, I've asked if the state has a copy that they could provide to us.
Turn the break.
I don't have one in the courtroom. I would have to go upstairs to see if we can obtain one.
Is that what you want to do?
I can ask a couple of follow-up questions. Officer, how long is that report?
I believe it's 9 pages.
And does that detail the investigation you did on a particular day or sort of total?
It's more so in regards to the interviewing with Ms. Bauer.
Okay, so the report that you reviewed was in relation to your report regarding your interview with Ms. Bauer?
Correct.
Your Honor, I would ask that we be provided a copy of that report.
All right, we'll take a minute here and allow the state to look at that. So we'll go off the record and we'll be in recess for some period of time, I guess. We'll go back on the record. Attorney Hogan, you've been provided a copy of that report then?
Your Honor, would note for the record, I was provided 2 pages of the report. There was some discussion between the attorneys and the witness. The witness had clarified that he'd only reviewed essentially 1 paragraph separated onto 2 pages in preparation for his testimony. That's what I was provided and had an opportunity to review.
Okay, so let's nail that part down with the witness, because the court's recollection of the witness's testimony is he reviewed a 9-page report. So I guess Attorney LaBrie, if you want to clarify that, then, well, wait, Attorney Hogan, you were asking. Yeah, I guess you go ahead and ask some questions about what you've been given, Attorney Hogan, and whether that's what you reviewed or not, and we'll go from there depending on the answers you get, what you want to tell me.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Officer, I'm looking at 2 pages of a document that I think you had an opportunity while we were on break to review. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And I believe I overheard you telling someone from the district attorney's office that there was essentially 1 paragraph and that was all you had reviewed.
Correct, yes, specifically about the photograph portion there.
Okay, prior to going on break, I asked you some questions about what you had reviewed.
Yes.
And you had indicated your report.
Yeah, I was referencing that specific report, yes.
Okay, but you didn't indicate at that time that you'd only looked at essentially 1 paragraph of that report?
Correct.
But your testimony here right now is that you did only review that 1 paragraph?
Correct.
You testified that you assisted in the search of the apartment?
Yes.
And no dirty diapers were located?
Correct.
Did you locate any clean diapers?
Yes.
How many?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I believe there was at least 1 box that was found.
1 box of clean diapers?
Yes.
And was there any sort of unsanitary conditions in the residence?
No.
There wasn't like garbage all over the place?
It was a well-kept apartment.
And were you made aware at all of when garbage had last been taken out of that residence?
I don't know for sure. There was garbage in a garbage can that was still there.
And how full was that?
Half to 3/4 full, I believe.
And you searched through that?
It was searched through. I did not do that myself.
Do you know if there were any soiled diapers in that garbage?
I do not believe so.
You testified that you reviewed a number of messages and photographs on some cell phones?
Correct.
And you testified about exhibits 1 and 2, and those were both photographs. Were both of those photos located on Katrina Bauer's phone?
No.
Which was exhibit 1 located on Katrina Bauer's phone?
Yes.
And exhibit 2 that was located on Jesse Vang's phone?
It was located on Facebook Messenger, sent from the defendant, yes.
Okay. And exhibit 1 was actually in the photo section of the phone?
Correct, extracted from Ms. Bauer's phone.
And you testified that in exhibit 1, that alleged child victim 1 is wearing a black blindfold?
Correct.
And there's some bruising that you were able to observe?
Correct.
And were you able to determine when that photo was actually taken?
Yes, based off of the timestamp from the phone extraction
And when was that?
on the 14th early morning hours.
And that was actually taken on Katrina Bauer's phone?
It was, and it showed GPS location of the defendant's apartment.
And in exhibit 1, you can see alleged child victim's sort of side face.
Yes, the right side.
And I believe his right arm, part of his right arm.
Correct.
I believe exhibit 1 shows alleged child victim 1 with a blanket
Yes,
on some type of mattress or bedding of some sort.
Correct.
Not laying on the floor at all.
Correct.
Covered up with a blanket partially.
Yep.
With respect to exhibit 2, you testified that shows alleged child victim 1 standing.
Yes.
From a distance away from the camera.
Correct.
And you testified that alleged child victim 1 is wearing only a diaper.
yes.
And that was taken, the photo was taken February 14th, I think you said?
This is a photo of the child victim one standing in the corner.
Correct.
I don't believe that was the date that photo was taken.
Do you recall the date that that photograph was taken?
I don't have the origin date of that photograph. I just am aware of when it was sent via Facebook Messenger.
And what date was it sent?
That was sent on, is it already, if I refresh my memory with the criminal complaint photograph?
If that would refresh your recollection.
Thank you. That would be February 15th.
February 15th was the date it was sent?
Correct.
And you testified that that was sent on Facebook Messenger from Jesse Vang's Facebook to Katrina Bauer's?
Correct, yes.
And in that photograph, you can see alleged child victim 1's skin.
Yes.
And you were able to observe any sort of bruising or other injuries in that photograph.
Can I refresh my memory by examining that exhibit again?
If you want to take a look at exhibit number 2.
I cannot.
You cannot locate any bruising or other injuries in exhibit 2?
Correct.
And are you able to tell if that photograph was taken in the daytime or at nighttime at all?
It appears to be daytime.
Now, you testified that you were able to observe some phone activity and location data from some cell phones in the early morning hours of February 17th.
Correct.
And I believe you said Katrina Bauer's phone shows her phone arriving at Mr. Vang's residence in the early morning hours,
Yes.
and then leaving that location at the same time Mr. Vang's phone was leaving.
Correct.
You testified that you observed some video surveillance from that date?
Yes.
And that was from Quick Trip?
Yes, it was.
And you saw Katrina Bauer go into a Quick Trip?
Yes.
Were you able to observe inside of the vehicle,
Yes.
like the entirety of the inside of the vehicle?
Based off of different frames, we were able to take and look inside the vehicle to observe all angles.
And you testified that the phones got back to Two Rivers at some point after 2 o'clock in the morning.
Correct.
And so between approximately 12:30 in the morning and 2 o'clock in the morning, through your investigation, there was no evidence of alleged child victim 1 having left the residence in that time frame.
Correct.
And I believe you testified that law enforcement was unable to find anyone caring for alleged child victim 1 during that time.
Correct.
And did you ask Katrina Bauer about that time frame?
We did, yes.
And what did she tell you about that time frame?
She was not able to give us a lot of detail on that time frame initially, as that was, she declined to initially give officers details regarding that time.
Did you or other law enforcement ask Mr. Vang about that time frame?
I specifically did not.
Have you taken other steps in attempting to identify anyone else who may have been at the residence during that time frame?
Yes.
And what kind of steps were those?
There were several interviews that were conducted through many of the other residents that are located in the apartment complex, which the defendant resides in. We've gone through, again, many phones and Facebook Messenger to determine if there was any care or conversation appeared to be had during those.
Were you able to determine whether there was any other person in the residence at that time?
We were not.
Are you aware that Mr. Vang has other children?
Yes.
Specifically, are you aware that Mr. Vang has a son that lives at that residence?
Yes.
And were you able to determine whether Mr. Vang's son was at the residence during that time?
It was assumed.
And so there was at least an assumption on law enforcement's part that there was at least another human being at the apartment.
Yes.
You testified that there was some messages from later on the date of February 17th that you reviewed.
Yes.
And one of them was with respect to alleged child victim 1 killing his neighbor.
Correct.
And that Mr. Vang had messaged that made him upset.
Yes.
And that Mr. Vang's message said, given alleged child victim 1 a cold shower.
Correct.
Did you or other law enforcement ask Mr. Vang about that message?
This was after he had already been taken into custody that was determined.
Do you have any evidence that Mr. Vang, in fact, gave alleged child victim 1 a cold shower on that day?
Other than the messages, we did not.
So it's just a message that Mr. Vang had said this is what he did. You don't know if that actually happened.
Correct.
You testified that there were some messages in the early morning hours on February 18th.
Yes.
And something along the lines of Mr. Vang saying that he was going to make alleged child victim 1 fear and respect him.
Correct.
In any of the messages that you reviewed, did you review any messages of Mr. Vang saying anything in relation to he was going to physically hurt alleged child victim 1?
To my recollection, no.
Any messages that he was attempting to not provide food to alleged child victim 1?
No messages.
Any messages related to anything specific about physically harming alleged child victim number 1?
No.
I have nothing further at this time.
Attorney Green.
Lieutenant Glazer, the photograph in Exhibit 2, you see the back of victim child 1, correct?
Correct.
You cannot see the front, the face, the neck, anything like that, correct?
Correct.
You can't see the elbow area that's depicted in Exhibit 1, correct?
Correct.
So the only thing you're able to view is the back of victim child 1, the back of his legs, and part of the back of his arms, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Whereas in Exhibit 1, you can see the injuries to the neck, the face, and the arm, correct?
Correct.
You were asked about February 17, 2024, that it was assumed that the defendant's son was in the residence during those early morning hours of 12:30 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
That individual, the son, can he care for another child?
No.
Is he even able to speak?
He is nonverbal.
Would he be able to, based upon his limitations, provide care for anyone else?
No.
And You were just asked some questions about the messaging from the 17th about the cold shower. And that messaging indicated that victim child 1 was clean after the shower, but also that he was scared, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing else, thank you.
Any follow-up to those, Attorney?
No.
All right. Lieutenant, you can step down. I'll take Exhibit 22 from you. Any other testimony, Attorney Brief?
No, just thank you.
Any testimony, Attorney Owen?
No.
Argument, Attorney Brief?
Your Honor, the state would move for binding over. I think we have sufficiently shown probable cause that a crime was committed and that it's probable that this defendant committed it. We have a specific time period in February of 2021. These incidents occurred in the city of Two Rivers. The victim was 3 years old, so he would be under the age of 6. That is required as far as the charging. We have multiple acts that could fit under the crime of neglect. There were multiple timeouts. We have those documented by the defendant's statements, photographs, as well as the messaging. There's also concern over proper physical care as far as the diaper. There's statements regarding potentially changed once a day. We're not finding dirty diapers in the garbage, but we are finding messaging about the child overflowing his diaper, and the photograph which shows a full one. There's the cold water threats, as well as utilization during the cold shower, which left the child scared. And furthermore, the child was left alone on that February 17th date without supervision for over an hour. I think at this point, at preliminary hearing, all inferences go to the state. I think we have sufficiently shown probable cause. Thank you.
Attorney Owen?
Your Honor, we're going to ask that the court not find probable cause with respect to the February 17th incident of alleged child victim 1 being left home without no supervision. I don't believe that the elements have been met at that time. The testimony is that the child's mother was actually at the location and ended up leaving with Mr. Vang. And given that the child's mother was there at the time, possibly was not Mr. Vang then being a person responsible for the welfare of the child during that time frame, as the victim's mother was present at that time and location. However, even assuming the court finds that at that time he was a person still responsible for the welfare of the child, there's just as much evidence to suggest that he was supervised as unsupervised. I think the testimony was we were unable to locate anyone who had been supervising the child or been at the residence during that time frame, and law enforcement made other assumptions as to other people who had been at the residence during that time frame. With respect to the condition of the apartment, the testimony is that there wasn't any unsanitary conditions at the residence, that it was generally a well-kept apartment, that when the search of the apartment was conducted, it was generally clean. One of the garbages was about half full. The officer testified that he wasn't aware whether any dirty diapers were located in that garbage. Even assuming that the photograph shows in exhibit number 2 a soiled diaper, the testimony is that a photograph was taken days prior to the search being conducted. There is testimony that Mr. Vang admitted to changing the diaper at least once per day. No evidence to suggest that alleged child victim 1's diaper necessarily needed to be changed more often than that, or that even if it did, that Mr. Vang didn't change it more than once. We have the testimony suggesting that at least once per day, which leads to the reasonable inference that on more than once per day it was also changed. So I think based on the testimony presented today, there is not probable cause to believe that Mr. Vang committed the offense charge, and we would ask that the court dismiss.
The court's charge at the preliminary hearing stage is to determine if there's probable cause to believe a felony was committed and the defendant committed it. When looking at the testimony and giving the reasonable inferences, finding reasonable inferences in favor of the state, what I think kind of ties it all together here is testimony regarding the text messages from February 18th, and specifically the defendant messaging Ms. Bauer that I'm going to make sure he hates me and being here. The message that he did fear me, he didn't respect me. He didn't respect me, now he didn't respect me. That tells me that the reasonable inference there is that Mr. Vang is carrying out actions that are designed to instill fear in the child. He acknowledges as much. I don't think one can reasonably make the argument that Mr. Vang is not engaging in conduct which could result in emotional or mental harm to the child when he specifically stated he's doing it in order to get the child to fear. Like I say, that's what ties it together. But the testimony in the record today, specifically referencing exhibits 1 and 2, it's full of evidence that supports finding the probable cause here. So the court will find that there's probable cause to believe a felony was committed and Mr. Vang committed it. I'll bind him over for further proceedings. Is this anticipating filing any information with charges that mirrors that amended complaint?
Your Honor, I'm asking for an agreement date. I don't need a long amount of time.
All right.
I'm fine with serving that this is defense counsel too.
I'm out next week and parties have time on the 16th.
Depending on time of day, yes.
I would hope 10:30.
April 16th at 10:30.
Yeah.
I actually believe Council and I are in motion hearing.
Oh.
It's in branch one, so we're,
Do you anticipate, how long do you anticipate that taking?
I think less than a half hour, correct?
Clean this way, that we can either do this on the front end of, if you're done before the half hour's up, or as soon as that's finished, because I don't think it'll take a whole half hour.
I would say it would probably be safer on the back end because that motion is a motion to dismiss and then approve.
All right,
So we did that 11:15.
okay, can you guys do 11:15?
That works. 11:15 works.
So we'll set the arraignment for April 16th at 11:15. Just one second here. Attorney Vang, you also had well, your client also filed a formal notification request. Did you file it with one of your own or not?
We did not. I thought I mentioned it at the last hearing. If I did not, I apologize. At this time, we were withdrawing that request.
All right, okay. Anything else for the record then today, Attorney LaBrie?
No, Judge.
Attorney Hogan?
No, thank you.
Then we're adjourned. Thank you for everyone's patience.
Most people have no clue